The human ship drifted silently into the heart of Coalition space, a vessel that seemed almost absurdly slow compared to the sleek, high-speed fleets that surrounded it. Its hull was bulky and outdated, a relic from a time when speed mattered less than endurance. Yet it carried an air of quiet defiance. Alien scouts approached cautiously, their sensors scanning every inch. Yet nothing alarming appeared. Laughter echoed through the alien comm channels, sharp and derisive. Commanders exchanged smirks, shaking their heads in disbelief. How can such a ship be dangerous? One sneered, leaning over a holographic display of the human vessel. Others joined in, betting on the exact moment it would be obliterated. Inside the human ship, the crew worked with calm precision, their movements deliberate and unhurried. The captain stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the alien fleet, unflinching. Around him, screens flickered with streams of data, each reading cross-checked against calculations no one outside could comprehend. There was no fear here, only patience and a silent understanding. Among the crew, that speed and power were not the only measures of strength. Every alien laugh, every mocking comment, only reinforced their resolve. The Coalition fleets, confident and arrogant, underestimated everything about this human vessel. Their sleek ships zipped past, firing test pulses that fizzled harmlessly against the ship's reinforced hull. Alien commanders leaned forward, scrutinizing their sensors, expecting to see some weakness revealed. But the human ship held, immovable yet alert, as if it existed in a rhythm of its own, independent of the chaotic galaxy surrounding it. Outside, the stars stretched into streaks as the slow-moving ship floated. Yet there was an almost imperceptible aura of inevitability about it. Every alien captain assumed that victory was already theirs, that mockery was a form of entertainment in this part of space. They had no reason to suspect that calm could carry such deadly potential. In the midst of their laughter, an almost invisible tension began to settle, unnoticed and unappreciated. A storm was coming, though no one aboard the human ship moved in haste. Every glance, every adjustment of a control lever, every flicker of data across the screens was a calculated step toward a reckoning the Coalition could not yet comprehend. The void of space held its breath, silent but expectant. The human ship remained a quiet anomaly, a slow-moving target in a sea of derision. But its presence alone began to shift the balance, planting the first seeds of fear in the hearts of those who thought themselves invincible. The alien scouts circled the human ship like predators, inspecting a strange, slow-moving creature, their sleek hulls glinting under the distant light of stars. Beams of scanning energy swept across the ship's exterior, searching for weaknesses, but the human vessel remained immovable and silent, as if it had been built to endure the curiosity and mockery of the entire galaxy. On the bridges of the alien warships, officers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, while others laughed, unable to hide their arrogance. "It appears unarmed," one officer said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Yet it moves with a strange, stubborn purpose." How amusing! Their laughter echoed through the comm channels, confident and biting, yet failing to reach the humans inside, who remained calm, focused, and seemingly indifferent to the ridicule. Inside the human ship, the atmosphere was a stark contrast. The bridge hummed with quiet precision as crew members monitored every alien maneuver, every sensor reading, every faint pulse of energy from the approaching fleets. Fingers danced across controls with practiced ease, adjusting settings, calculating trajectories, and analyzing data streams with meticulous attention. The captain stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the readouts, observing patterns in the alien formations. His expression was composed, almost serene, but beneath the calm lay a deep awareness. Every alien movement, every gesture of overconfidence, was being catalogued, measured, and prepared for. There was no panic, no haste, only the steady, deliberate rhythm of a crew who understood that patience could be more deadly than speed. As the scouts continued their loops, the aliens' mockery grew louder, more confident, yet cracks of unease began to form. Some noticed the ship's subtle adjustments in position, the almost imperceptible shifts in trajectory that seemed to anticipate their own movements. Dismissing it as coincidence, they laughed again, unaware that their arrogance was blinding them to the first signs of calculated strategy. The humans, on the other hand, observed everything, their awareness extending far beyond the visible. Every light pulse, every display of alien hubris was a signal, a piece of the larger plan they were quietly assembling. The void of space stretched around them, silent yet charged with tension. The coalition fleets assumed they controlled the narrative, confident in their technological superiority, blind to the fact that the human ship was quietly redefining the rules of engagement. Laughter still echoed, but it now carried a subtle edge of unease, as if the aliens could sense, without knowing why, that the slow, unassuming vessel drifting among them was more than it appeared. The calm patience of the humans was a quiet storm, waiting for the moment when Mockery would transform into something far more terrifying. The coalition fleets had grown increasingly frustrated. The human ship remained slow, almost sluggish by their standards, yet it refused to falter or react in the ways they expected. Alien commanders huddled over holographic displays, pointing and gesturing, debating strategies with raised voices and clipped tones. Some argued for a direct assault, believing their overwhelming speed and firepower would crush the human vessel instantly. Others suggested harassment from a distance, trying to test its defenses without exposing their own ships. Every suggestion carried confidence, but beneath it, a creeping unease began to settle. There was something in the human ship's stillness, a subtle precision in its movements that defied logic. Inside the human vessel, the bridge was a study in calm efficiency. Crew members moved deliberately, each action synchronized with the next. Their eyes scanning displays, analyzing every alien maneuver, every pulse, every flicker of energy. The captain's gaze was steady, unbroken, as he observed the chaotic formations of the coalition fleets. He whispered quietly to his crew, "Patience. They are blind to what's coming." The words were simple, but carried a weight that silenced any doubt. Around him, the crew responded without question, each member fully aware of their roles. Every calculation precise, every movement intentional. There was no rush, no panic, only a quiet anticipation that grew heavier with every passing moment. The aliens, meanwhile, grew more arrogant and reckless. They sent faster, more advanced ships to probe the human vessel, expecting it to reveal weaknesses under pressure. Their beams of scanning light crisscrossed the hull, probing for cracks or vulnerabilities, yet the human ship held firm, unshaken. Each failed attempt seemed only to amuse the humans, whose eyes flicked over data, interpreting and predicting the aliens' next moves with uncanny accuracy. The coalition assumed that mockery and intimidation would provoke a response, but the humans remained still, almost unnervingly patient. As the standoff continued, the first hints of fear began to appear in the alien ranks. Their laughter, once confident and mocking, faltered as small inconsistencies in the human ship's behavior caught their attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to sow doubt. Was the ship simply slow, or was its calmness a sign of something more dangerous? No one spoke the thought aloud, yet the tension was palpable. The coalition's arrogance had blinded them to the possibility that this unassuming vessel, moving at a snail's pace, could outmatch them not through speed or firepower, but through patience, precision, and foresight. The human ship floated steadily through the void, silent and unassuming, yet already setting the stage for the shock to come. Every motion, every calculation, was a thread in a plan the alien for hours. The human ship had drifted almost imperceptibly through coalition space, its massive hull a stationary target by all visible measures. The alien fleets had begun to grow bored, their sensors showing no signs of aggression, no weapons drawn, nothing threatening. Mockery echoed through the channels of their communications as commanders continued to joke and ridicule the seemingly clumsy vessel. "It moves like a corpse," one sneered. "We could destroy it with a single volley and still have time for dinner." Another added, laughter cutting through the vast emptiness of space. Yet within the quiet expanse of the human ship, Tension and anticipation simmered like a storm about to break. Then, barely noticeable at first, the engines sparked. A faint glow shimmered along the edges of the ship's propulsion systems, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. Sensors aboard the alien ships detected the shift, but no one considered it significant. It was slow, subtle, barely a motion at all. The alien commanders leaned back in their chairs, unconcerned, confident in the superiority of their technology, certain the human ship could not outmaneuver them. But every spark, every pulse from the engines was deliberate, controlled, and calculated. The humans were no longer passive observers. They were preparing the first step in a plan that would soon unravel everything the coalition thought it knew. Inside the bridge, the crew's movements were precise, almost ritualistic. Hands adjusted controls with perfect timing, eyes scanning endless streams of data, and fingers danced across holographic interfaces that tracked every alien vessel and every pulse of energy. The captain stood at the center, calm and composed, giving no outward sign of what was about to happen. "Steady," he whispered. "Watch and remember. This is only the beginning." Each crew member responded in quiet agreement, understanding the weight of patience, the importance of timing, and the power hidden in deliberate restraint. The alien fleets continued their mockery, unaware that they were already being studied and anticipated with terrifying precision. Every probe, every maneuver, every attempt at intimidation was recorded, calculated, and counted in ways invisible to those who believed themselves in control. The human ship moved almost imperceptibly, yet with a rhythm and intent that the aliens could not yet comprehend. The calm exterior, once dismissed as weakness, was the first hint of a storm. The smallest movement, the faintest spark of energy, carried within it a promise of chaos, a silent warning that the laughter of the coalition was about to die. Replaced by fear, the void of space seemed to hold its breath, the mockery fading into tension, the first signs of horror lurking in the shadows of anticipation, moving confidently, its weapons systems active, expecting an easy demonstration of superiority. The coalition fleet watched eagerly, a smirk still on their faces, certain that the humans would flinch or attempt some clumsy maneuver. But inside the human ship, the crew remained calm, their focus unbroken, their movements measured. The engines pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, yet every subtle adjustment aligned perfectly with a plan. The aliens could not even imagine. In an instant, the scout ship was gone. There was no explosion, no debris slowly drifting away. The vessel had been obliterated, with such precision and speed that it might have disappeared from existence entirely. Alarms screamed across the coalition. Comm channels as shock rippled through the fleet. Officers froze, their faces pale as the implications of what they had just witnessed sank in. "Impossible," one gasped. "There's no way. Human." The laughter that had dominated the comms just moments before vanished, replaced by a chilling silence, punctuated only by panicked chatter and the frantic reports of missing ships. Inside the human ship, the crew did not celebrate or exult. Their expressions remained calm, almost serene, as though what had just occurred was expected, inevitable even. Fingers danced across controls with quiet precision, adjusting settings, monitoring energy fluctuations, and scanning for the next threat. The captain stood at the helm, eyes unwavering, observing the chaos that now consumed the alien fleets. Every motion, every calculation, every decision had been deliberate, and the destruction of the scout ship was only the beginning. The coalition fleets scrambled in disbelief, their confidence shattered. Ships that once patrolled with arrogance now twisted and turned erratically, attempting to regain control of the unfolding situation. Every maneuver seemed anticipated, every attack predicted and neutralized. Alien officers shouted over comms, trying to coordinate responses, but their communications were fragmented, fear creeping into every word. The human vessel, which had once been mocked for its slowness and outdated design, now became the center of a nightmare they could not comprehend. From the perspective of the humans, the galaxy had shifted subtly but irreversibly. The mockery had turned to horror, the arrogance to dread, and the slow, Unassuming ship was no longer a curiosity or a joke. It was a weapon, a force of calculated destruction, moving through space with patience. At precision and inevitability, the first shockwave had hit, and the Coalition's empire of confidence was beginning to crumble. The quiet anticipation broke suddenly, like a lightning strike across the void. One of the alien scout ships approached the human vessel. The Coalition fleets had gone from disbelief to panic. The human ship, which had once drifted slowly and seemingly helpless, now moved with a precision and speed that defied the aliens' understanding. Every maneuver was calculated, almost anticipating the next attack before it happened. The alien commanders shouted orders, directing squadrons to encircle and trap the vessel. But each attempt failed with unnerving consistency. Lasers and energy pulses fired from every direction, cutting streaks of light across the void, yet none found their mark. The human ship twisted and turned through the chaos, slipping past attacks with near-perfect timing, as if it existed in a rhythm entirely separate from the universe around it. Inside the ship, the crew worked in complete harmony. Each member monitored a specific sector of space, tracking enemy movements, calculating trajectories, and adjusting controls in a synchronized ballet of precision. The captain remained calm, his eyes fixed on the shifting patterns of the Coalition fleets, anticipating their next moves with uncanny foresight. "They move too fast," he said quietly, almost to himself. "But they are predictable." The crew responded without hesitation, executing adjustments so seamless that the human ship's movements appeared effortless from the outside. There was no panic, no wasted energy, only a controlled, deliberate motion that made the impossible seem routine. The aliens' confidence crumbled with every missed shot. Pilots and commanders who had once laughed at the human ship's slowness now shouted in frustration, their systems overwhelmed, their strategies failing in real time. They had underestimated the humans, dismissing the slow-moving vessel as harmless, and now every miscalculation cost them dearly. Some ships collided in confusion, others veered too sharply and were disabled by their own fleet's fire. The once ordered formations devolved into chaos, an unplanned symphony of destruction orchestrated by arrogance and fear. The human ship moved with terrifying efficiency through the battlefield, a calm predator in a sea of panic. Every strike it avoided, every evasive maneuver, only amplified the fear spreading among the Coalition forces. It was no longer a chase. It had become a lesson in the danger of underestimation. The aliens began to realize that speed and technology alone could not guarantee victory. The humans combined anticipation, patience, and precision into a weapon far more dangerous than any single fleet of ships. In the darkness of space, the human ship glided effortlessly, untouchable and silent, leaving trails of confusion, fear, and broken formations behind. The laughter that had once echoed across the Coalition comm channels had vanished entirely, replaced by a mounting, inescapable dread. The humans were no longer a curiosity. They were a storm, moving with deliberate calm, and nothing could stop what was coming next. The Coalition fleets reeled in confusion and disbelief. For the first time, commanders realized that their assumptions had been catastrophically wrong. The human ship, once dismissed as slow and outdated, moved with a purpose that no one could fully comprehend. Intelligence officers scrambled to analyze data, projecting new theories, attempting to understand how a single vessel could anticipate every attack, every maneuver, every feint. The numbers on their screens did not add up. Every calculation they made was immediately proven wrong, as if the humans were playing a game with rules no one else had ever seen. Panic began to spread, subtle at first, then growing rapidly, threading through every bridge and command center like a contagion. Inside the human ship, the crew remained calm, almost eerily so. Every movement was deliberate, each decision executed with flawless timing. Fingers moved over consoles with quiet precision, adjusting propulsion, monitoring energy distribution, and analyzing enemy formations with speed and accuracy that seemed impossible. The captain's eyes never left the unfolding chaos. "They think they understand the battlefield," he whispered. "But they are already lost." The crew exchanged no words, only glances and subtle nods, a silent agreement that the humans' advantage was already absolute. Every probe, every strike, every calculation of the aliens had been anticipated, and every outcome had been planned. The coalition fleet struggled to maintain cohesion. Their once ordered formations were unraveling as ships collided or veered too sharply, trying to compensate for movements they could not predict. Advanced weapons fired repeatedly, only to miss by meters, evaporating harmlessly into the void. Commanders shouted orders that were ignored, overridden by the chaos that their own arrogance had unleashed. Fear had begun to replace confidence, and it was spreading faster than any human firepower could. The thought that this single vessel could not only survive but dominate was no longer theoretical, it was undeniable. Every scanning pulse, every attempt to probe for weaknesses, only confirmed the human superiority. The coalition had assumed speed, and numbers could overwhelm any slow-moving ship. But now they were witnessing the collapse of their certainty. What had begun as mockery had evolved into horror. The human vessel was not just surviving, it was redefining the rules of combat in real time, exploiting flaws the aliens did not even know existed. In the darkness of space, the human ship moved like a predator in a field of blind hunters. Calm, deliberate, unstoppable, it left the coalition fleet scrambling, disoriented and terrified. For the first time, the arrogance of the galaxy's greatest powers began to crumble, replaced by a singular, chilling realization. The humans were something. The human ship shifted from evasion to action, moving with a precision that was almost surgical. One by one, alien fleets that had once hovered arrogantly in formation were struck with devastating accuracy. Ships disintegrated before their pilots could react, shields collapsing as energy pulses carved through them with terrifying efficiency. The coalition officers screamed over communications, their voices cracking with panic as entire squadrons vanished in moments. Commands were shouted, orders were repeated, yet nothing could stop the relentless precision of the human assault. The humans were no longer defending themselves. They were dismantling an entire system of arrogance and control with unerring skill. Inside the human vessel, the bridge was a model of calm focus. Crew members moved with silent understanding, each anticipating the next strike, each countermeasure calculated before the enemy even fired. The captain's hands rested lightly on the control console, adjusting a trajectory here, recalibrating an energy pulse there. His eyes, steady and unyielding, tracked multiple fleets at once. There was no haste, no panic, only the quiet rhythm of absolute control. Every attack the humans executed seemed inevitable yet effortless, as if the ship itself were a living entity capable of thinking, predicting, and striking with perfect timing. The coalition forces were thrown into chaos. Ships collided in confusion, attempting to evade strikes that had been predicted before they were even conceived. Weapons that had once symbolized dominance now failed spectacularly, striking nothing but the vacuum of space. The arrogance of the alien commanders crumbled in real time, replaced by horror and disbelief. They had assumed that speed and technology could guarantee victory, but the humans had turned every assumption against them. Every movement, every calculation of the aliens had been foreseen, every strategy dismantled before it could even begin. The destruction was both swift and complete. Debris floated in eerie silence, ghostly remnants of once powerful fleets, now reduced to nothing. Communications channels were filled with fragmented reports, cries of confusion and panicked speculation. The human ship moved through the battlefield like a silent predator, untouchable and unchallenged, leaving only devastation in its wake. The coalition had learned far too late that mockery had been a fatal mistake, and that underestimating their opponent was more dangerous than any weapon. In the void of space, the human vessel glided onward, calm and unstoppable. The fleets that had laughed at it were now scattered and broken, their confidence shattered. The humans were no longer a joke, no longer a curiosity. They were a force, precise and merciless, a nightmare that had arrived quietly, but now consumed everything in its path. Every echo of Mockery had been replaced by a single, undeniable truth: they were unstoppable, and the galaxy would never forget their. The galaxy had begun to tremble in fear. Reports of entire squadrons vanishing reached every coalition command center, each message carrying disbelief, panic, and terror. Officers who had once laughed at the human ship now stared at holographic displays in frozen horror, their hands trembling over controls, their voices barely above whispers. Pilots and captains recounted encounters in fragmented, terrified tones, describing a ship that seemed to anticipate every move, every maneuver, every strike before it even happened. The human vessel was no longer a threat in the conventional sense. It was a nightmare made tangible, a predator whose methods were beyond comprehension. Inside the human ship, the crew remained composed. Each motion, each adjustment, each command was executed with quiet precision. Eyes flicked over countless displays. Fingers moved over controls with seamless efficiency. And not a single member of the crew displayed panic. The captain observed the chaos outside, reading the patterns of fear that now rippled through the coalition fleets. "They are terrified," he whispered. And they should be. There was no need for celebration. The humans did not fight for glory or fear. They operated with the calm inevitability of a force that could not be stopped, only witnessed. The coalition fleets, once confident and mocking, were now disoriented and broken. Command chains failed, strategies collapsed, and ships collided in frantic attempts to evade destruction. Even the most advanced vessels, the pride of the coalition, were no match for the calculated precision of a single human ship. Officers could only watch as their fleets were reduced to fragments, their technological superiority rendered meaningless against an opponent they had assumed would be insignificant. Panic spread like wildfire, infecting every level of command, leaving nothing but confusion and despair. From the human perspective, the battlefield was a study in control. Every alien attempt to regroup or counterattack was anticipated. Every movement accounted for and countered with methodical precision. The human ship moved through the remnants of the coalition forces like a shadow, silent yet undeniable, its presence reshaping the balance of power in ways the aliens could scarcely comprehend. Legends began to form in real time, whispered across destroyed communication channels and among trembling survivors. Humans were not merely fast or strong, they were unstoppable, calculating and terrifyingly precise. Mockery had become horror, arrogance had turned to fear, and the galaxy was learning a lesson too late. Nothing prepared them for what had arrived. In the endless void of space, the human ship glided onward, a silent harbinger of chaos, leaving behind a trail of dread that would haunt every fleet for years to come. After days of relentless chaos, the human ship drifted silently into the depths of space, leaving behind a battlefield littered with the remnants of fleets that had once dominated the galaxy. The coalition, fractured and demoralized, struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. Entire squadrons had vanished. Command centers had been reduced to chaos, and fear now ruled every corner of their territory. The arrogance that had fueled mockery and laughter was gone, replaced by a creeping dread that no strategy, no weapon could dispel. The humans had not only survived, they had rewritten the rules of engagement entirely. Inside the human ship, the bridge was calm, almost eerily so. Crew members moved with quiet efficiency, their eyes scanning displays, adjusting trajectories, and monitoring distant sectors. The captain stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the infinite darkness ahead, untroubled by the destruction left behind. There was no celebration, no relief, only a steady, deliberate focus. Each action, each adjustment, was a testament to disciplined foresight and the quiet inevitability of their mission. The humans had not sought glory. They had executed what needed to be done with precision, leaving a galaxy forever changed in their wake. Reports from the coalition filtered in slowly, fragmented and terrified. Survivors spoke of shadows moving faster than thought, of attacks that seemed impossible, of a vessel that predicted every maneuver. Their voices trembled as they described the horror they had witnessed, the loss of entire fleets, the helplessness of once powerful commanders. What had begun as mockery had transformed into legend, whispered through the void of space and passed along by trembling pilots. The humans were no longer a curiosity or a minor threat. They had become a story told with fear, a tale of inevitability and destruction that no one would forget. As the human ship glided further into the darkness, space seemed to hold its breath. Stars stretched into distant streaks, silent observers of the quiet power passing among them. The galaxy had seen a force that was patient, precise and unstoppable. A single vessel that had humiliated, terrified, and conquered through skill and calculation alone. The coalition fleets, once confident and mocking, would remember this day for generations, a stark warning against underestimation. In the stillness of the void, the human ship faded into the distance, a silent shadow among the stars. Legends would form, warnings would be issued, and stories of fear and awe would circulate across every system. The galaxy had been shown that calm, deliberate action could be more devastating than firepower, and that the slowest, most unassuming ship could carry within it the power to change everything. The humans were gone from sight, but their presence lingered like a shadow over the entire galaxy, unstoppable, unchallenged, and unforgettable.